Hey everyone, in this video, we're going to go over how to add a register view to our reviews application. So looking at our previous video, we have a login page. We set up our auth context, our authentication context, and we created a, where is it? Right here, we created this login function, and then that login function called a NextJs API route that we created inside of our API/login folder to actually log the user in and make a request to our backend. And then we called this login authentication context function right here inside of our submit handler when we submit a login form. So we're going to follow the same sort of structure to create a register function, a register of API routes, and then call it inside of a register page that we'll build here in a little bit. So if you didn't follow along with the last video, you may want to watch that one first, as that will kind of explain how we set a lot of this up. But other than that, let's go ahead and get started with this. So the first thing we need to do is we need to make one update to our backend. So you look at our views.py, what we have right now as for our API endpoints, we have a user API view, and this will get the logged in user. And we also have this user view set that will handle get, post, put, or delete requests on the user model. But if you look at this last line right here, we have permission classes equals permissions.isAuthenticated. So the user must be logged in to access these routes. And of course, for a register route, that won't really work because the user won't be logged in because they need to create an account. So we could update this and make some changes here, but I kind of want to keep this how it is for some other reasons and some other purposes. So I'm going to go ahead and create another API route specifically for registering a new user. So down here at the bottom, we'll go ahead and create a new route. I'm going to go ahead and create a class. I'm going to call this register user API view. And like we did for this retrieve API view, if we look in the docs, we go to API guide and go to views, go to generic views, we'll see we have this retrieve API that we used last time, but we also have this create API view as well. And this is for a create only endpoint that handles a post request. And we're going to go ahead and use this one here. And so we can import that from the same place we import this retrieve API view. We can import create API view. And then we can go ahead and inherit from that in a register user API view, create API view. And this view will be very simple. We only need two lines. First, we need to go set the permission classes. So like we explained earlier, this needs to be to allow anyone to sign up. So we'll do permissions.allowAny, which does not require anyone to be logged in to access this route. Any public user can access it. And now we need to set a serializer class. I'm going to go ahead and create a new serializer class for this. So we'll do a serializer class equals, we'll call this register user serializer, because we want to go ahead and override our create function in this serializer. So I'll explain that here in a second, but for now, go ahead and just put register serializer, user serializer, and we're going to import that from our serializers as well. So we'll find that right here, and we'll import that at the end here, register user serializer. Okay, now let's go and jump in our serializers and create this serializer. I'm going to go and put this underneath my user serializer, as it's going to be pretty similar. We'll do a class register user serializer, and this will be from serializers.hyperlinked model serializer. And now we'll go ahead and put a class meta like before, a model equaling user, and fields equaling URL, username, password, email, and groups. Okay, and now we want to go ahead and add one more thing here. So we look in the serializer docs. If we go down to the saving instances, we can see we have a .create and a .update method available in a serializer. And these are the methods that allow us to create an object in the database and return a object instance. Now by default, our model serializer already has a function .create, but we can override that and add some custom functionality to it. And that's what we're going to do here. So to add a custom function to a serializer, a model hyperlink model serializer, what we can do is we can go above the class meta and we can create the function right here. So in our case, we want to override the create because we're creating a user. So we'll do a create like that, and we'll pass in self and validated data. Now this validated data will be the data the user passes in to the form. So what we can do here is we can create a new user, and set it equal to user, and we'll do user.objects.create user. And this create user function should handle hashing the password for us. So that should be handled automatically. So we don't have to worry about exposing the user password. That should already be handled for us right there. So what we can do here is we can do email equals validated data, and it should be a dictionary. We can grab the email object or the email key and whatever values associated to that. Then we can do the same for the username and the password. So username equals validated data, username, password equals validated data, password. So these are the fields we're going to have available to the user to fill out when they submit the form. So our form in our front end will have a password field, a username field, and an email field. So we want to go ahead and save all that data right here. And then once we're done, we want to go ahead and return this user instance. So we want to go ahead and return user. And that should be it for this view and serializer. Let's go ahead and add this to our URLs now. So I'll open up backend, go to URLs, and I will find, let's see here, right here at the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and create another path. So we'll do path. And since we're not using a view set here, we're going to go ahead and define the path mainly inside our URL patterns. So I'm going to go ahead and define this as API/register. And we'll do a views.register user API view, I think I called it. Let's double check that real quick. Register user API view. Yep, so that should be it right there. And of course, since it's a class-based view, we need to do as_view like before. We'll give it a name equaling to register. Let's save that. Let's check our terminal for any errors. Everything looks good. Now let's go ahead and test this out. So I'm going to go ahead and use Insomnia to test this out. You could use Postman or anything else, or if you just want to watch, you don't really need to fill this out. We'll use this in our front end and we can test it there as well. But I think it's kind of nice to be able to test things using some sort of API client instead, just to double check that everything's working before getting into the front end. So we'll go ahead and do that right now. So I already have this created from a previous video. I'm going to go ahead and delete this response over here. I'm going to delete the JSON body. I'm going to start from scratch. So what we need to do, we need to make a post request. So let's look at our code again real quick. So if we look at our view here, we use the CreateAPI view. So a post request is what we'll need to do here. This is what's handled automatically by this CreateAPI view. And then looking at our serializers, we're having an email, a username, and a password where we want to submit to the data to create the user. So if we look at this, what we can do is we can do a post at http localhost 8000/API/register. This was the route we just created. In the headers, I'm going to put a content type application/JSON. And now inside of the JSON body, I can go ahead and pass in those different values. So I'll create an email. Now let's create a test user maybe. I don't think I used that one yet. We'll create a password and we'll just put, I guess just password for now. And then we're going to go ahead and I guess above the password, I'll put a username. So you do username and this will be test user. Let's go ahead and make sure to put an @example.com on the email. So there we go. So we have an email of testuser@example.com, a username of testuser, and a password of password. Let's go ahead and submit this and see what happens. So it looks like we're getting a not found error. So let's double check what's going on here. So I did API/register. What did I put the routes in the URLs? I forgot the trailing slash. Let's go ahead and see if that fixes it. There we go. Okay, so yeah, make sure you have that trailing slash on your URLs. But when we submit that, you'll see what we get back. We get back the user we just created. We have a new URL with the new user ID at the end here. We have our username of test user. We have our password, which is now hashed for us. So that's handled automatically. So you don't have to worry about sending a plain text password. And then we have our username or email set right here in this email field. So now we should be able to go to our previous users that we create up here. So we go to our views. We have this user view set. We should be able to do a get/users and get all of our users. But for this, we'll need to have an is-authenticated user. So what we'll do back inside of Insomnia, we'll go to our access token route that we created in a previous video. I'm going to go ahead and use I'll use the new user. We'll do test user, and we'll send that, and we'll get this new access token. I'm going to go ahead and just copy this, and then go to users/users. We'll make a get request. I'll go to this header. I'll delete this old token. I'll put bearer space and paste in our token, and let's send. Now, all of this was explained in previous videos, so if you've been following along, this should all make sense. If not, you may need to go back and watch this. But what we have here, just in case you're a little lost with this, what we're doing here is we have this API/token route, which will return our authentication tokens that we have here. And we're taking this access token, going to our headers for our users' requests, and putting bearer space token with a key here of authorization. And that will log a user in for us. But when we do that, you'll see here we have a test.example.com. We also have this test user that we just created. So we successfully created a user using this register route. So now we have a register route available to actually create a user for us without needing to be logged in. Okay, perfect. Now with those changes done, we should be able to jump into our front end and start creating the code for that. So what we'll start with is a register page. So we don't have that form yet to actually register a user. So let's go and create that. So we look in our pages account login. We have this login page here. I'm going to go ahead and start with this just to make things a little easier. So I'm going to go ahead and do a Control A, copy, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new page inside of our account folder. I'm going to save this as register.js. Now I'll go ahead and paste in everything right here. Now we can go ahead and update this to handle a register instead of a login. So first we'll change the name here to register page. And then down inside of our form here, we're going to go ahead and make some changes here. So first things first, I'm going to go ahead and comment out this login and this login down here, and we're going to update that later. But inside this form here, we should be able to change a few things. So first we'll change our login here to register. And this code is all available in the description below if you need to get that and you want to follow along. It's there if you need it. But then we'll go ahead to each of our fields. So we have a username, which is fine. We'll leave that as it is. But we want to go ahead and create another field. And this will be our email field. So we'll go ahead and create another email field right here. Label being email. And then we need to create a new state value to handle saving an email. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this username field right here, paste it right here, and change this to email, and change set username and change that to set email. We should now be able to use that on this new email field. So I'll come over here and change set username to be set email. And then we'll change the value here to be email as well. And that should grab this value right here. Okay, now the last field we want to add here is we want to add a new password field. So what we'll do here is we'll go ahead and copy this password field down, and we'll change this to password 2. This will be our password confirmation field. That way we know the user put in the correct password. So then we'll go down here and we'll go ahead and copy this password field right here, paste it right there, and this will be confirm password. And then we'll change the set password to set password 2, and then we're also going to go ahead and grab the password 2 value and make sure that's what we save or fill in this field with. Okay, now with that done, we should have everything we need to get the correct data to create a user. Now, the last thing we want to change in this HTML here, or this JSX, is our link here at the bottom. We put don't have an account, sign up. I'm going to change this to already have an account, sign in. That way, if they already have an account, they're on the register page, there's a link for them to go sign in with their account. And then we'll change account here, or account/register to account/login. And we'll save that. Okay, let's go ahead and just take a look at this form and see if it's working correctly. I think that's everything we need to change. Let's go and try it out real quick. So I'll go to account/register. And there we go. So now we have a username, email, password, confirm password, a login button, and this already have an account, sign in. Oh, we need to fix our link though. Okay, so let's see what's going on there. So to fix that, we just need to put a slash in front of the account. We'll save that, come back here, reload the page, and then when we click on this button, it'll take us back to our login page, and we can switch back and forth. Oh, we need to fix that one as well. So we'll add the slash in front of the register, or the account, and the account/register as well. So we'll come down here, and we'll add a slash here in the front, save that, and that should fix both of those buttons. Now we should be able to switch back and forth between both pages. There we go, and we come back just like that. Okay, perfect. Now let's go ahead and make sure all these values are saving correctly. So we'll go ahead and when we submit this form, we'll just console log all these values. So back in our code here, we have this submit handler that we copied over right here, and we have that called on our form somewhere right here. So our form tag right here has an onSubmit handler. So when we submit a form, there's a few things we need to make sure we do. First, we need to make sure we prevent any default behavior. By default, when we submit a form, it will refresh the page and reload the page. We don't want that. So we can do e.prevent default, and now prevent the page from reloading. Next, we can go ahead and console log all of the values. So we'll do a console.log, and I'll create an object here, and I'll put username, comma, password, comma, or so username, email, password 2. Now let's see if we can log all the values correctly. Back in our browser here, refresh the page, and we'll go ahead and do a test at example.com, a password of password. We'll type that again, and then we'll open the terminal or the console here, and we'll hit login, and there we go. And then we log out our email, our password, our confirm password field, and then our username. But if we go ahead and here put a wrong password in, like put some extra characters, hit login, it still logs this data out. Let's go ahead and put in a if statement to catch that and throw an error if that happens. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and do a console error if that happens, and later we'll add some better error handling. So we'll do if password is not equal to password 2, then we're going to go ahead and do console.error, and then we'll do passwords do not match. And then we can go ahead and put a return here if you want to. I'm going to leave it without that for now, so it still logs what our data out. But if we come back here, we can now check if these passwords are the same. So we'll go ahead and do test at example.com. We'll do a password of just 1234, 1234, hit login, and there we go. Password the same. Let's add an extra character here, add a 5, hit login, and it throws us an error. We can see that the passwords don't match. So now we can correctly handle any logic with this form. Let's go ahead now and work on submitting this form. So what we'll do is first we'll create a register context function. So we'll go into our authentication context file inside of context, authentication context, and we're going to go ahead and create another function down here. So we're going to do a const register equals, this will just be an arrow function. And then we want to go ahead and add this register function to this value prop right here. So we'll put a comma and register. And if we don't do this, it will be undefined. It'll throw some errors. And once we have it here, it should be accessible anywhere in our application. So just make sure that's there. Okay. And now that we have that added, we can go ahead and start adding this logic. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy everything's had this login function because we're going to start with a lot of this. We want to have the same error handling and whatever else. So I'm going to go and just copy that and paste it here to give us a starting point. So looking at this function, we have a try catch and we have a config and a body. This all works good. But unlike our login function here, all we have is a username and a password. We want a username, email, and a password. So inside of the register parameters here, I'll pass in username, email, password. And we want to make sure that in our const body, we have an email field as well. Okay. Next, we're going to go ahead and make a request to a API/register function that we'll create here in a second. So this needs to go to HTTP localhost 3000/API/register. We also don't really need to get the data because we're not going to return any data that we need to access. So we'll go ahead and delete that, and we'll also go ahead and delete all this access response stuff that we don't need anymore. And we're also going to go ahead and delete this router.push. Okay, so right now all we have is this function right here. And this right here will be create or call NextJs API function to create a user. That's what this line is going to do. Then we have our error catching that we did last time. So if you watched the last video, you should understand what we're doing here. We're going through Axios and we're catching if there is a response, but there's an error, what's there. If there's not a response, look at the request. If not, look at whatever error message is being passed in. So just same as last time, we're doing that same error catching right here. Now we'll build this here in a second, but we're going to add one more thing to this file here. After we create the user, we want to go ahead and log that user in. And we could go ahead and add all of that logic to this function, but the easiest way to do this would just be to call the login function we wrote last time. So I'll create the login function and I'll pass in the username and the password to log in the user. Let's go ahead and save that now. And let's go ahead and create this file right here. So this will be in our API folder /register. So now we'll jump into our API folder right here, and I'll create a new file and I'll save this as register.js. So I'm going through this a little fast because this process is pretty much the same as last time. So if you watched the last video, hopefully this all makes sense. We're going to be doing the same thing over and over again a couple times. So if it still doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, hopefully after doing it a few more times it will, because everything we add for every authentication function will have to follow the same sort of process. Now we have this register file created. Let's go ahead and create a function here. And I'm going to go ahead and start again with this login function to give us a good starting point because a lot of this will be similar. So I'm going to go ahead and copy all of this, come back into our register API and paste that right here. We're not going to need the cookie this time because all we're doing is registering a user. So anything with this cookie we can get rid of. So I'll get rid of the set header right here, and this comment is not needed anymore. So we'll go ahead and delete all of that. We'll keep this error catching. It's the same as before. We're using Axios request, so you want to have the same error catching. And then down here, so everything above this res.status will delete. And then I also want to delete this extra parenthesis right here. Okay. Now let's go ahead and update this to actually create a new user. So what we'll have here is right down here where we have this axios.post. Once again, we don't really need to get the response. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. I also don't need this access token line here. I forgot to get rid of that. Let's go ahead and delete that as well. Okay, but right now we're going to this API/token, but we just created earlier this API/register where we just pass the data in the body. So we're gonna do the same thing here now. So what we'll do here is change this API token to API register, and our body will contain our username, our email, and our password, which is the same what we did here. We pass the body of email, username, and password. We're doing the same thing now, but inside our JavaScript. We also want to go ahead and make sure we get the email from the body. If we look in our authentication context where we're calling this function, inside this body, we have access to the username, the email, and the password. So we can pull all of that out right here from the request.body. Okay, now with that done, we can call this await axios.post 8000 API/register to create that user. And then once we finish all of this, we'll catch any errors if they come up. And if not, we'll return this res.status 200. And instead of returning this data, I'm going to return a message. And this will be user has been created. And I think that should be it. We're once again in this function like we did for a login function. We're making sure that it's a post method. And if not, we're throwing this error. I think that should really be it. Let's go ahead and try this out. There is one thing I forgot though. So if we were to go to our authentication context, this register function is using async await. So we need to make sure we add async up here in the function. So just like we did for our login up here, you make sure we have async on both these functions. Let's go ahead and save that. Okay, now with that fixed, the very last step is to actually use this function inside of our form. So we'll go into our account register. We're gonna go ahead and uncomment this line. And instead of login, I want to get the register function I created. So since I passed it in down here in the value prop, I should have access to it by using use context. So just like before, use context, passing our authentication context, we should be able to grab that register function. Now, I'm gonna go and just comment out this console log line and uncomment this login line and change login to be register. And then we'll pass in our username, our email, and our password. And we don't need to pass in both passwords now because we already checked if they're the same or not. So that should be fine just like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and refresh this page and give this a shot. So we'll do a test user 2 at example.com. Put in a password of password and a password again of password. Make sure those are the same and hit login. And it redirects us back to the home page, and we look inside of our nav bar here. You see it changed to sign out. So we successfully created a user and logged them in. So now we have a register function working just like that. So following the same process as last time, we're able to use all that, log them, register them, and log them in. Perfect. So now we can go ahead and double check by jumping into Insomnia, and I'll go ahead and go to my token request again. We'll hit send. I'll grab this access token and just double check that user was created. I can go back to my users, get request, and I can go ahead, delete all this and put bearer and hit send on that. And now we see our test user 2 right here. It set our username, our email, and our password's not coming back in this request, but that was set as well. Okay, perfect. So that's really it for this video. I just want to go ahead and create a register function so we could register a user. This stuff's a little more complicated than what we're doing before, so you may need to watch this video a couple times to fully understand what we're doing. The last video went over a lot of this. I kind of skipped over this time because, we're doing the same thing again. So hopefully that helped and that made sense. And now we have a register function working on in our reviews application. Next, we'll come back and we'll do some logout stuff and some persist users and some other things there. But we got most of the big stuff out of the way. So we'll come back next and finish a lot of this up. Then we should have user authentication working in our reviews application. All of the code should be in the description below, as well as any links that may be useful and helpful. But that's really it. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.